Rebecca Hayes had always been the type of person who saw the good in others. Maybe that was her problem. At 32 years old, she taught second grade at Pine Valley Elementary, and every single one of her students adored her. She had this way of making even the most challenging kid feel special. But when it came to her own life, she somehow missed all the red flags that everyone else could see from miles away. She'd been with Tyler for 3 years. 3 whole years of making excuses for him. 3 years of her friends gently trying to tell her something was off. 3 years of convincing herself that love meant sacrifice and patience. Tyler didn't work much. He had big dreams, he'd say. He was going to start a business. He was going to make it big. But mostly he played video games and went out with friends while Rebecca paid the bills. On that Tuesday afternoon in late October, Rebecca left school early. Her principal had sent her home because she'd been fighting off a cold all week and finally looked like she needed rest. She drove home in her old Honda, thinking about nothing more than getting into comfortable clothes and maybe watching something mindless on TV. The apartment door was unlocked. That should have been her first clue. Tyler never remembered to lock it, even though she'd asked him 1,000 times. Rebecca pushed it open and stopped cold. The living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Drawers hung open. Her jewelry box lay empty on the floor. Her laptop was gone from the coffee table. Then she heard laughing coming from the bedroom. Female laughter mixed with Tyler's voice. Rebecca's heart started pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She walked down the hallway, her hands shaking, and pushed open the bedroom door. Tyler stood there, and next to him was Vanessa. Vanessa Chen, who'd been Rebecca's best friend since college. Vanessa, who she'd cried to about Tyler. Vanessa, who'd slept on her couch during her divorce. Vanessa, who she'd trusted with everything. But what happened next was something Rebecca's brain couldn't quite process fast enough. Tyler wasn't just standing there looking guilty. He was holding her electric hair clippers, the ones she kept in the bathroom cabinet. And he had this look on his face that Rebecca had never seen before, something cold and mean. "Hey babe," he said, and his voice had this mocking edge to it. Perfect timing. Rebecca tried to back up, but Tyler moved faster. He grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. Vanessa was holding up her phone, recording. "Actually recording this." Rebecca tried to pull away, tried to scream, but Tyler was stronger. He'd never been violent before. She'd never thought he would be. "You've been controlling me for 3 years," he said through gritted teeth, wrestling her toward the chair he'd placed in the middle of the room, always telling me what to do, always nagging, always making me feel small. Rebecca's mind raced through every conversation, every gentle request she'd made, asking him to help with rent, suggesting he look for work. Was that controlling? Was she crazy? Before she could think anymore, she felt the vibration of the clippers against her skull. The sound filled her ears. She watched in horror as chunks of her long brown hair fell to the floor, hair she'd been growing for 5 years, hair she'd always loved. Tyler worked methodically, almost businesslike, shaving it all off while Vanessa filmed and laughed. "This is what happens to controlling girlfriends," Vanessa said to the camera. "Maybe now she'll learn." When Tyler finished, Rebecca sat there with a completely bald head, tears streaming down her face. She looked at herself in the mirror Tyler held up mockingly and didn't recognize the person staring back. She looked sick. She looked like someone undergoing chemotherapy. She looked destroyed. Tyler and Vanessa gathered up bags they'd already packed. Rebecca's jewelry, her laptop, her grandmother's watch, things that actually mattered to her. They walked out laughing, leaving her sitting there in the chair, surrounded by her own hair. For a long time, Rebecca couldn't move. She just sat there, running her hands over her smooth scalp, trying to make sense of what had happened. This was assault. This was theft. This was betrayal on a level she couldn't comprehend. But more than that, it was humiliating in a way that cut deeper than any physical wound. When she finally got up and looked at her phone, she saw that Vanessa had already posted the video. It was on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. The caption read, "When your controlling ex finally gets what she deserves. Sometimes you gotta humble people." Rebecca watched the views climb. 10, 50, 200. Within an hour, it was over 1,000. People from her town were seeing this. Parents of her students, her colleagues, everyone. The comments were the worst part. Some people defended her, but so many didn't. She probably did deserve it. Controlling women need to be put in their place. This is hilarious. Some people made jokes about her being sick, about her looking like a cancer patient, about her deserving worse. Rebecca called the police with shaking hands. 2 officers showed up an hour later, both men who looked bored before they even walked in. She tried to explain what happened, showing them the video, telling them about the theft. "Look, ma'am," the older officer said, sighing like she was wasting his time. "This is really more of a domestic situation. It's hard to prove assault when it's your boyfriend and you let him in the apartment. And the theft, well, you'd have to prove those items were exclusively yours." "He shaved my head against my will," Rebecca said, her voice cracking. "It's on video. Did he hit you?" The younger officer asked. "He grabbed me. He forced me. But did he punch you? Any visible injuries besides the hair?" Rebecca looked down at the bruise forming on her arm. She showed them. They barely glanced at it. "That's not much to go on," the older officer said. "And honestly, with your relationship history, a DA probably won't prosecute. These domestic things are messy. They're hard to prove. Our hands are pretty tied." They left. They actually left her there like that, like what had happened to her didn't matter at all. Like she wasn't a person deserving of protection or justice. Just another hysterical woman making a big deal out of a relationship problem. Rebecca sat on her couch as the sun set, watching the video continue to spread across the internet. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, some supportive, many cruel. Her mother called crying. Her principal called asking if she was okay and gently suggesting she might want to take some personal time until things calmed down. That's when it really hit her. This video was never going away. In the age of screenshots and shares and viral moments, this would follow her forever. Parents would see this and wonder if she was stable enough to teach their children. Future employers would find this. Future dates would find this. Her face and her humiliation were now permanent fixtures on the internet. By midnight, Rebecca had made a decision. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't face the stares and whispers. She couldn't walk into her classroom and see the pity in everyone's eyes. She couldn't exist in a place where Tyler and Vanessa could walk around freely, while she was the one left to deal with the consequences. She packed a bag with clothes and what little money she had left in cash. She loaded it into her Honda along with some food, a sleeping bag, and her winter coat. She didn't have a plan exactly. She just knew she needed to go somewhere far away, somewhere nobody knew her face or her story. Rebecca had grown up in Colorado, and she'd always found peace in the mountains. When everything got overwhelming as a kid, her dad used to take her hiking. He'd passed away 5 years ago, but she still remembered the quiet he'd shown her up there, the way the world seemed smaller and more manageable among the pine trees and peaks. At 2 a.m, Rebecca started driving west, toward the Rockies. She didn't know where exactly she was going. She just drove, watching the city lights fade behind her and the dark shapes of mountains rise ahead. Her hand kept reaching up to touch her bald head, each time sending a fresh wave of shame and anger through her chest. She'd lost her hair. She'd lost her possessions. She'd lost her dignity. She'd lost her sense of safety in the world. But as she drove through the darkness toward the mountains, Rebecca made herself a promise. She didn't know how yet, but somehow she was going to find a way to put herself back together. Somehow she was going to survive this. Rebecca drove until sunrise painted the mountains pink and gold. She'd been going for hours, winding deeper into the Rockies on roads that got narrower and less maintained the further she went. Exhaustion pulled at her eyes, but she kept pushing forward. Something inside her said she hadn't gone far enough yet. Around 8 a.m, her Honda started making a sound it had never made before. A grinding, coughing noise that made her stomach drop. She pressed the gas pedal and nothing happened. The car was slowing down on its own, right there on a lonely mountain road with nothing but pine trees on either side. Rebecca managed to coast onto a narrow shoulder before the car died completely. She turned the key. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. She wasn't a car person, but she knew enough to pop the hood and look. Not that she'd know what she was looking at. Steam rose from somewhere in the engine. Something smelled burnt. She pulled out her phone. No service. Of course there was no service. She was in the middle of nowhere, miles from anything that looked like civilization. The last town she'd passed was at least 40 minutes back. For a while, Rebecca just sat in the driver's seat, trying not to panic. The morning was cold, probably in the 30s, and she watched her breath fog up the windows. She had her winter coat, but it wasn't really meant for surviving outdoors in late October in the mountains. Then the snow started. Not a gentle dusting, but real snow coming down thick and fast. Within minutes, Rebecca could barely see the trees 20 feet away. The wind picked up, rocking her small car. She knew she had two choices. She could stay in the car and hope someone drove by, or she could start walking and try to find help. Staying in the car felt safer, but as the temperature dropped and the snow piled up, Rebecca realized she might freeze to death waiting for help that might never come. This road was barely maintained. She hadn't seen another car in over an hour. Rebecca layered on everything warm she had. 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, her winter coat, a scarf wrapped around her head where her hair used to be, gloves, everything she'd thrown in the bag. She grabbed her backpack with some water and granola bars and started walking. The cold hit her immediately. The wind cut through her clothes like they were paper. Snow pelted her face and stuck to her eyelashes. She kept her head down and walked, following the road because it was the only landmark she had. After an hour, Rebecca's fingers and toes had gone numb. After 2 hours, she couldn't feel her face. She kept stumbling, her legs not quite working right anymore. Her thoughts were getting fuzzy around the edges. Some distant part of her brain recognized these as signs of hypothermia, but she couldn't quite hold on to the thought long enough to be scared. She fell in the snow, and it took her a long time to get back up. Then she fell again. This time standing seemed impossible. The snow was soft, almost comfortable. Rebecca's eyes started to close. Just a short rest, she thought. Just a minute to gather her strength. That's when she heard footsteps crunching through the snow. Heavy footsteps, deliberate and fast. Rebecca tried to lift her head but couldn't manage it. "Hey," a deep voice called out. "Hey, can you hear me?" Strong hands rolled her over. Through her blurred vision, Rebecca saw a face above her. A man, maybe 40, with a thick beard covered in ice and intense dark eyes that looked worried. He wore a heavy coat and a fur-lined hat, and behind him she could see a massive dog, some kind of husky or malamute. "Can you walk?" the man asked. Rebecca tried to answer, but her jaw wouldn't work right. She managed to shake her head slightly. Without another word, the man scooped her up like she weighed nothing. He was tall, maybe 6'3", and broad across the shoulders. He carried her through the snow while his dog bounded ahead, and Rebecca's foggy brain couldn't quite process what was happening. Time became weird. She'd close her eyes, and when she opened them, things had changed. First they were in the forest. Then they were on a path. Then there were walls around her and blessed warmth, and she was being lowered onto something soft. Rebecca drifted in and out. She felt someone removing her wet clothes, which should have alarmed her, but she was too cold to care. Dry, warm layers replaced them. Blankets piled on top of her. Something warm pressed against her feet. Hot water bottles, maybe. When she finally came fully back to herself, she was lying on a bed in a small cabin. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace across the room. The walls were rough wood, decorated with simple shelves holding books and supplies. Through a window, she could see the storm still raging outside. The man sat in a chair near the fire, watching her. The big dog lay at his feet. When he saw her eyes open and focus, he stood up and walked over. "How you feeling?" he asked. "Cold," Rebecca managed. Her voice came out as a whisper. "That'll pass. You were pretty far gone when I found you." He handed her a mug of something hot. "Drink this slowly. It's just broth, but it'll help." Rebecca took the mug with shaking hands and sipped. The warm liquid felt like heaven going down her throat. "Thank you," she said. "You saved my life," the man shrugged. "Found you at the right time, I guess. What were you doing out there in a storm?" Rebecca didn't know how to answer that. The whole story felt too big and too humiliating to tell. "My car broke down," she said finally. "I was trying to find help." He nodded, studying her face. Rebecca suddenly remembered her bald head and reached up self-consciously. The scarf was gone. He'd seen. "That road doesn't get much traffic," he said, not commenting on her appearance. "You could have died waiting in your car or walking. Storm like this, most people don't know what they're doing in the mountains." "Are you saying I don't know what I'm doing?" A hint of a smile crossed his face. "Lady, you were wearing sneakers and a coat meant for city winters." "So yeah, that's what I'm saying." Rebecca wanted to be offended, but he was right. She had no business being out here. "I didn't exactly plan this," she said quietly. "Most people who end up in trouble don't." He sat back down in his chair. "I'm Daniel." "That's Bear." He gestured to the dog, who lifted his head at his name. "Rebecca." "Well, Rebecca, you're welcome to stay until the storm passes. Should be a day or two. I've got a spare room, plenty of food. But I need you to understand something. We're miles from anything. No cell service. No neighbors. No way down the mountain in this weather. You're stuck here with me until it's safe." Something in his tone made Rebecca look at him more carefully. He wasn't threatening her. He was making sure she understood the situation. Making sure she felt safe despite being alone with a strange man in an isolated cabin. "I understand," she said. "And I'm grateful. Really." Daniel nodded and stood up. "Get some rest. Your body needs it. I'll make something more substantial for dinner." Over the next few hours, as the storm howled outside, Rebecca dozed on and off. Each time she woke up, Daniel was doing something. Chopping vegetables, reading a book, feeding wood into the fire. He moved around the small cabin with practiced efficiency, completely comfortable in his solitude. When evening came, he brought her a bowl of stew that tasted better than anything she'd had in months. Real meat, vegetables, herbs. She ate it all and felt human for the first time since the assault. "This is really good," she said. "Thanks. You learn to cook when you live alone in the mountains. How long have you lived here?" 5 years, give or take. By choice?" Daniel glanced at her and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or memories he didn't want. "Yeah," he said simply. By choice, Rebecca recognized that tone. It was the same one she'd been using. The tone that said there was a story there, but it wasn't one she wanted to tell. She decided not to push. That night, Daniel set her up in a small bedroom that was clearly a storage room he'd cleared out. It had a narrow bed, a small window, and hooks on the wall. Simple but clean. Before he left, he put a heavy coat on the bed. "Bathroom's down the hall," he said. "If you need anything in the night, just call out. I'm a light sleeper." "Daniel," Rebecca said as he turned to leave. "Why did you help me?" "You don't know me. I could be anyone." He paused in the doorway. "You were dying in the snow," he said. "That's all I needed to know." After he left, Rebecca lay in the darkness listening to the storm. She should have been terrified. She was alone in a cabin with a strange man miles from civilization, but somehow she wasn't scared. Daniel had every opportunity to hurt her when she was helpless, and he hadn't. He'd been nothing but respectful and kind. The next morning, Rebecca woke to find the storm still going strong. She got up and found Daniel outside clearing snow from the porch. He'd left coffee on the stove for her and oatmeal staying warm. She ate breakfast and watched him work through the window. When he came back in, stamping snow from his boots, he found her at the kitchen table. "Storm's supposed to last another day at least," he said. "You holding up okay?" "Better than yesterday," Rebecca admitted. "I'm sorry I'm imposing." "You're not imposing. Not often I get company." "Do you ever get company?" "Every few months I go down to town for supplies. See a few people. That's about it." Rebecca tried to imagine living like this, completely alone, cut off from the world. It should have sounded awful, but right now it sounded like the most peaceful thing imaginable. "What do you do all day?" she asked. Daniel shrugged. "Chop wood, hunt, fish, read, fix things that break. Take care of Bear. It's simple, but it's enough." "Don't you get lonely?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I used to," he said. "Now I prefer the quiet." They spent the day in a comfortable rhythm. Daniel showed her around the cabin, explaining his systems for water, for food storage, for heat. He treated her like a person, not asking intrusive questions about why she was there or what had happened to her hair. He just let her exist without judgment. That evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Rebecca found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Maybe it was the isolation. Maybe it was the fact that Daniel didn't know her story and couldn't judge her for it. Maybe it was just that she was too tired to keep her walls up anymore. She found her hand reaching up to touch her bald head again, a habit she'd developed. Daniel noticed. He was quiet for a while, then said, "You don't have to tell me, but if you want to, I'm listening." And maybe it was because he said she didn't have to. Maybe it was because he'd saved her life and asked for nothing. Maybe it was because she was so far from everything that none of it felt real anymore. Whatever the reason, Rebecca started talking. She told him everything. About Tyler and Vanessa. About the video. About the police who didn't care. About how the whole internet had seen her humiliation. About how she couldn't face going back to her life. The words poured out of her, and once she started, she couldn't stop. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finally finished, tears running down her face, he was quiet for a long time. "People can be cruel," he said eventually. "They think because it's online it doesn't matter. But it does. What happened to you, that was assault. That was real. The police didn't think so. The police are wrong. His voice was firm, and those people online, they're cowards. It's easy to be cruel when you're hiding behind a screen. Rebecca wiped her eyes. I just don't know how to go back to my life after this. Everyone's seen it. Everyone knows. How do I stand in front of a classroom or go to the grocery store? Or exist as a normal person when this is always going to be there? Daniel leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. You want my honest opinion? You don't go back. Not right away. Not until you're ready. But I have a job. I have responsibilities. And you almost died in the snow yesterday because you were running away from a situation you couldn't handle. Sometimes the responsible thing is to step back and figure out what you actually need. Rebecca looked at him. Is that what you did? Stepped back? Yeah, he said quietly. I did. 5 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in a car accident. Drunk driver hit them head on. They died instantly. I was overseas, deployed. Didn't even get to say goodbye. Daniel, I'm so sorry. He shook his head. After I got back, I tried to go back to normal life. Tried to work, tried to function. But everywhere I went, I saw them. Every sound made me jump. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't think. The world felt too loud, too fast, too much. So I left, came up here, built this cabin. And slowly I put myself back together. Did it work? I'm still here, aren't I? I'm not saying it's the right choice for everyone. But for me, I needed the quiet to heal. I needed space from all the noise and the expectations and the reminders. Up here, I could just be a person again. Not a veteran with PTSD. Not a grieving husband and father. Just Daniel. Rebecca sat with that for a while. I can't just hide in the mountains forever. I'm not saying you should, but maybe you could stay a while. Until the storm passes, at least. Until you figure out what you want to do next. You're safe here. Nobody knows where you are. You can just breathe for a few days. I'd be imposing. You already said that, and I already told you you're not. Daniel stood up and put another log on the fire. Get some sleep, Rebecca. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps. But for tonight, you're safe, you're warm, and you're alive. That's enough. As Rebecca lay in bed that night listening to the wind howl around the cabin, she realized something. For the first time since Tyler had shaved her head, she didn't feel ashamed. She didn't feel like she needed to hide or apologize or explain herself. Daniel had seen her at her absolute lowest and hadn't judged her, hadn't pitied her, had just treated her like a person deserving of respect and kindness. Maybe, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, healing was possible after all. Maybe she didn't have to have all the answers right now. Maybe it was okay to just exist in this quiet place for a while and figure out who she wanted to be on the other side of her trauma. Outside, the storm continued. But inside the cabin, Rebecca felt the first stirrings of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The storm broke on the third day. Rebecca woke to sunlight streaming through the small window and the sound of absolute silence. No wind, no howling, just quiet. She got up and found Daniel already outside, surveying the damage. Snow was piled everywhere, at least 3 feet deep. The world looked completely transformed, pristine and white and beautiful. Roads will be clear in a few days, Daniel said when she joined him on the porch. I can help you get your car towed once they're passable. Rebecca nodded, but something in her chest tightened. The idea of leaving, of going back down the mountain to face everything, made her feel sick. Right, she said. That makes sense. Daniel glanced at her. Or you could stay a while longer. If you want. I couldn't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. He turned to face her fully. Look, I know what it's like to need time away from the world. If you want to stay here and figure things out, you can. I've got plenty of space, plenty of supplies. And honestly, it's kind of nice having another person around. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. Why are you being so kind to me? Because someone was kind to me once when I needed it most. And because you deserve it. He said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I don't have anything to give you. No money. No way to pay you back. I don't want your money. Daniel gestured around them. But if you want to earn your keep, there's always work to do. I could teach you what you need to know. And that's how Rebecca found herself staying. At first, she told herself it would just be a few more days. Just until she felt stronger. Just until she could face the world again. But days turned into a week, and a week turned into 2, and somehow she was still there. Daniel was a patient teacher. He showed her how to chop wood, explaining the proper stance, the right angle, how to let the axe's weight do the work. The first time Rebecca successfully split a log, she felt ridiculously proud of herself. Her arms ached for days afterward, but it was a good ache, an accomplishment ache. He taught her how to identify animal tracks in the snow. Deer, elk, rabbits, coyotes. How to read the forest and understand what had passed through. He showed her edible plants even in winter, and how to purify water from the stream. How to maintain the fire so it never went out. How to preserve food and rotate supplies. Every skill felt like armor, like she was building something inside herself that nobody could take away. Not Tyler, not Vanessa. Not anyone. The physical work was exhausting, but good. Rebecca's body grew stronger. Her hands developed calluses. Her muscles adapted. She got better at reading the weather, at anticipating what needed to be done around the cabin. She learned to split kindling, to patch holes, to fix simple things that broke. And slowly, without quite meaning to, she started talking to Daniel. Really talking. Not just about what had happened to her, but about everything. Her childhood. Her father. Why she became a teacher. Her dreams and fears and all the messy, complicated things that made her who she was. Daniel talked too in his quiet way. He told her about his time in the military, about the things he'd seen that still haunted him, about his wife who'd been a nurse and loved terrible puns, about his daughter, who'd been 8 years old and obsessed with dinosaurs. He showed Rebecca a picture he kept, the edges worn from handling, a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a gap-toothed little girl, both gone. "Do you think you'll ever go back to the world?" Rebecca asked him one evening as they sat by the fire. Daniel was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," he said finally. "Part of me knows I should. That hiding up here isn't really living, but part of me isn't ready yet. Maybe won't ever be ready. Don't you get lonely? Sometimes? But lonely is better than the alternative. Down there I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everyone wanted something from me. Wanted me to be okay, to move on, to be the person I was before. But I wasn't that person anymore. I couldn't be." Rebecca understood that more than she wanted to admit. "I keep thinking about my students," she said. "They must be so confused about why I'm gone. I didn't even say goodbye. You can call the school when you're ready. Let them know you're okay. And tell them what? That I ran away to the mountains after my boyfriend assaulted me and the video went viral? You could tell them you needed some personal time. You don't owe anyone your story, Rebecca. Not unless you want to share it." That idea felt revolutionary, that she could choose what to share. That her trauma didn't define her unless she let it. One morning in her 3rd week at the cabin, Rebecca woke up and realized she hadn't thought about the video in 2 whole days. She'd been too busy learning to use a bow saw, too focused on helping Daniel repair a section of the roof, too exhausted from splitting wood. The shame that had been a constant weight on her chest had lightened. She went to the bathroom and looked at herself in the small mirror. Her head was no longer completely bald. Short stubble had grown in, maybe half an inch. It was coming in darker than her natural color, almost black. She ran her hand over it and felt the texture, soft and new. For the first time, she didn't immediately feel a wave of humiliation. She just saw hair. Growing back, like proof that things could recover given time. That afternoon, Daniel took her hunting for the first time. They moved quietly through the forest, bear ranging ahead of them. Daniel showed her how to read the signs, how to move without sound, how to wait with patience. They didn't catch anything that day, but Rebecca didn't care. She was too busy feeling alive. The cold air in her lungs, the crunch of snow under her boots, the vast silence of the forest. For the first time in her adult life, she felt genuinely present in her own body. "You're getting good at this," Daniel said as they walked back to the cabin. "At what? Being still? Most people can't handle quiet. They need constant noise, constant distraction, but you're learning to sit with yourself." Rebecca thought about that. "I never had a choice before. There was always something demanding my attention. School, Tyler, responsibilities. I never just existed. That's what most people do. They fill up their lives so they don't have to think. But thinking is important. Processing is important. You can't heal if you're constantly running." They reached the cabin as the sun was setting, painting the snow orange and pink. Rebecca helped Daniel prepare dinner, moving around the small kitchen with practiced ease now. They'd developed a rhythm, an unspoken understanding of how to share space. Over dinner, Daniel said, I need to go into town next week. Restock some supplies. You could come with me if you want, or you could stay here. Rebecca's first instinct was to stay. The idea of seeing other people, of potential judgment, made her anxious. But then she thought about what Daniel had said about running. About facing things. I'll come, she heard herself say. I should probably deal with my car anyway. Daniel nodded, understanding what that decision cost her. We'll make it quick. In and out. But that night, as Rebecca lay in bed, doubt crept in. What if someone recognized her? What if the video had spread even here, to this small mountain town? What if people stared and whispered and judged? She almost changed her mind a dozen times over the next few days. But Daniel didn't push. He just prepared for the trip, gathering his list, checking his truck. The night before they were supposed to go, Rebecca stood in front of the mirror again. Her hair had grown enough that it was a definite pixie cut now. Short but intentional looking. With the right clothes, she could almost pass for someone who'd chosen this style. She thought about Tyler and Vanessa, probably still living their lives like nothing had happened. Still posting on social media, still going out, still laughing at her humiliation. The unfairness of it burned in her chest. But then she thought about everything she'd learned in the past month. How to split wood, how to track animals, how to survive in the wilderness, how to sit with her thoughts without running from them, how to see herself as more than her worst moment. She thought about Daniel, who'd lost everything and rebuilt himself in the quiet of the mountains, who'd saved her life and asked for nothing in return, who'd shown her that healing wasn't linear or pretty, but it was possible. Rebecca made a decision. She wasn't going to hide anymore. She wasn't going to let Tyler and Vanessa and all those cruel strangers on the internet decide who she was or what she was worth. She was going to face the world again. Maybe not all at once, maybe just a small mountain town for now, but it was a start. The next morning, she got dressed in clothes Daniel had lent her. Practical jeans, a warm flannel shirt, sturdy boots. She looked at herself one last time. She looked different. Stronger somehow. More real. Daniel was waiting by his truck, Bear already loaded in the back. He looked at Rebecca and nodded approvingly. Ready? As I'll ever be, she said, and climbed into the passenger seat. The drive down the mountain took over an hour. Rebecca watched the landscape change, the wild forest giving way to civilization. Houses appeared, then buildings, then the small town of Pine Ridge spread out before them. It wasn't much. Maybe 2,000 people, if that. A main street with a grocery store, a hardware store, a diner, a gas station. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Where strangers were noticed. Daniel parked in front of the hardware store. I'll be about 30 minutes, he said. You want to wait here or come in? Rebecca took a deep breath. I'll come in. The store was warm and smelled like sawdust and metal. An older man behind the counter looked up when they entered. Daniel, he said, surprised. Haven't seen you in months. Thought maybe you'd gone full hermit on us. Just stocking up, Frank, Daniel said. He didn't explain Rebecca's presence, and Frank didn't ask, though his eyes lingered on her with curiosity. Rebecca wandered the aisles while Daniel gathered supplies. She ran her fingers over tools and nails and coils of rope. Simple, useful things. Things that made sense. She was looking at a display of knives when she heard voices at the front of the store. Did you see that video? A woman was saying. The one with the teacher? Rebecca froze. The one where the boyfriend shaved her head? Another woman responded. Oh my God, yes. I mean, she must have done something to deserve it, right? That's what I thought. You don't just do that to someone for no reason. Rebecca's hands started shaking. She couldn't breathe. They were talking about her. Right here in this random mountain town, they'd seen the video. They'd judged her without knowing anything about her. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Daniel stood beside her, his expression calm but his eyes sharp. He'd heard it too. You okay? He asked quietly. Rebecca shook her head. She wasn't okay. She wanted to scream at those women. Wanted to tell them they didn't know what they were talking about. Wanted to defend herself, but her voice wouldn't work. Daniel picked up one of the knives from the display, a beautiful fixed blade with a wooden handle. He handed it to Rebecca. Feel the weight of this, he said, speaking at a normal volume. Good balance, full tang. This is the kind of knife that lasts a lifetime. Rebecca took it, confused, still shaking. You know what I learned in the mountains? Daniel continued, still speaking loud enough for the store to hear. That strong people get torn down all the time. That cruel people will always judge. But the strong ones, they keep going anyway. They survive. They build themselves back up. And eventually they're stronger than they ever were before. He looked at Rebecca meaningfully. You want this knife? Every person who survives something hard should have something that reminds them of their strength. Rebecca understood what he was doing. He was giving her something to hold on to. A symbol, a reminder. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Daniel took the knife to the counter. The women had gone quiet, moving away. Frank rang them up without commenting on Daniel's speech, though Rebecca saw understanding in his eyes. As they left the store, Daniel handed Rebecca the wrapped knife. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone, he said. You know what happened. I know what happened. That's enough. Rebecca clutched the knife to her chest. Thank you. They spent another hour in town. They stopped at the diner for lunch, and Rebecca forced herself to eat even though her stomach was in knots. A few people stared. A few whispered. But Daniel sat across from her, steady and calm, and somehow that made it bearable. At the mechanic shop, they arranged to have Rebecca's car towed and assessed. The mechanic, a kind-faced woman named Rita, told Rebecca it would probably take a week to get the parts. You staying in town? Rita asked. She's staying with me, Daniel said simply. Up at my place. Rita raised her eyebrows but didn't comment. I'll call when it's ready. On the drive back up the mountain, Rebecca was quiet. She watched the town disappear behind them. Watched the wilderness reclaim the landscape. You did good today, Daniel said. I almost had a panic attack in the hardware store. But you didn't. You stayed. You faced it. That takes courage. Rebecca thought about the women in the store, about their casual cruelty, about how easy it was for people to judge situations they knew nothing about. Does it ever stop hurting? She asked. Knowing people think the worst of you? Eventually you stop caring what they think. You realize their judgment says more about them than it does about you. Daniel glanced at her. But it takes time. And it's not linear. Some days are harder than others. When they got back to the cabin, Rebecca felt like she could finally breathe again. The familiar space welcomed her. Bear bounded around, happy to be home. The fire crackled to life as Daniel fed it logs. That night, Rebecca sat by the fire and unwrapped the knife Daniel had bought her. She turned it over in her hands, feeling the weight, the balance. It was beautiful and practical and strong, just like she wanted to be. What did you mean? She asked Daniel. When you said every person who survives something hard should have something to remind them of their strength. Daniel looked at the knife, then at her. I meant that trauma tries to take things from you. Your sense of safety, your trust, your self-worth. But if you have something tangible, something you can hold, it reminds you that you survived, that you're still here, that you're stronger than what tried to break you. Rebecca ran her thumb along the blade's spine, careful of the edge. I want to learn to use this properly. I'll teach you. And he did. Over the next few weeks, Daniel taught Rebecca knife skills. How to grip it properly, how to sharpen it, how to use it for practical tasks like preparing food, carving, basic bushcraft. Every lesson was also a lesson in control, in confidence, in trusting herself. Rebecca's hair continued to grow. Her body continued to strengthen. Her mind continued to heal. She still had bad days. Days when the shame and anger overwhelmed her. But she also had good days. Days when she felt capable and strong and alive. She started thinking about her future differently. Not as something happening to her, but as something she could shape. She could go back to teaching, but maybe somewhere new. Or she could do something completely different. The world felt full of possibilities instead of just obstacles. One morning, almost 2 months after she'd arrived at the cabin, Rebecca woke to find herself smiling. Actually smiling for no reason other than she felt good. The sun was shining. The cabin was warm. She could hear Daniel outside chopping wood. And she realized she was happy. Not the fragile, dependent happiness she'd felt with Tyler, always walking on eggshells, always trying to be good enough. But real happiness, the kind that came from knowing herself, from being comfortable in her own skin, from building something real with her own hands. She got up and looked in the mirror. Her hair was maybe 2 inches long now, thick and dark and starting to have some shape. She looked healthy, strong, like someone who'd survived something difficult and come out the other side. Rebecca went outside and found Daniel. Teach me to hunt, she said. For real this time. Not just tracking. Actually hunting. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, reading something in her face. Then he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's do it." 3 months into her stay at the cabin, Rebecca had become someone she barely recognized. Not in a bad way. In a way that felt true and solid and earned. She could split a full cord of wood without stopping. She could track animals through the forest and predict where they'd go. She could start a fire in the rain. She could identify edible plants and knew which streams were safe to drink from. She'd even successfully hunted her first deer with Daniel's guidance. And though she'd cried afterward, she'd also felt the weight of what it meant to provide for herself. Her hair had grown to about 4 inches, long enough to style a bit. She kept it short by choice now, liking how practical it was, how it made her feel less like someone hiding, and more like someone who'd chosen this version of herself. But something had been building between her and Daniel that neither of them had acknowledged. It lived in the way he looked at her across the fire at night, in how their hands would brush when they were cooking together, in the comfortable silences that felt full instead of empty, in how Bear had started sleeping at the foot of her bed instead of Daniel's. One evening in early February, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. The temperature had warmed enough that they didn't need to rush inside, and the sky was doing that thing where it turned a dozen shades of pink and orange. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said quietly. Rebecca's heart jumped. "Okay, I'm in love with you." He said it simply, like he was stating a fact. "I didn't mean to be. Wasn't looking for it. But you're here every day and you're brave and strong and real, and somewhere along the way I fell." Rebecca's breath caught. She'd known on some level, had felt it herself, but hearing it out loud made it real and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "I'm not asking you for anything," Daniel continued. "You came here to heal, not to jump into another relationship. And I've got my own mess to deal with. But I needed you to know." Felt dishonest not to say it. Rebecca turned to look at him. His profile against the sunset, strong and weathered and kind. This man who'd saved her life and asked for nothing. Who'd taught her to be strong again. Who'd shown her that good men existed. "I love you too," she said. "I think I have for a while now." Daniel looked at her, surprise and hope mixing in his expression. Yeah, Rebecca smiled. "You're the first person in years who's made me feel safe. Who's made me feel capable. Like I'm not just someone's girlfriend or someone's teacher or someone in a viral video. Just me. You are you," Daniel said. "That's all you need to be." They sat there as the sun disappeared, not touching but somehow closer than they'd ever been. Bear sighed contentedly at their feet, apparently satisfied with this development. Later that night they talked for hours. About what this meant. About their fears and hopes. About the fact that they were both damaged people who'd run to the mountains to escape their pain. "I don't want to be your rebound," Daniel said, "or your savior. I want to be your partner." "I don't want to be your way of moving on from your family," Rebecca replied. "Or a replacement for what you lost. You're not. You couldn't be. What I feel for you is different. Its own thing. Then we figure it out together," Rebecca said. "Whatever this is, we do it honestly." They started sharing more of themselves. Daniel told her about his nightmares, about the survivor's guilt that still haunted him. About how some days he couldn't understand why he got to live when his wife and daughter didn't. Rebecca told him about her fears of never being enough. About how Tyler had slowly eroded her confidence over 3 years of small cruelties. They kissed for the first time on a Tuesday morning while they were chopping wood. It was unexpected and perfect and tasted like coffee and pine trees. Bear barked once as if giving his approval, then went back to napping in a patch of sunlight. But even as Rebecca felt herself falling deeper into this relationship, into this life part of her knew she couldn't hide forever. She'd been gone from her real life for 3 months. Her school had probably replaced her. Her apartment had probably been emptied. Her mother was probably frantic. One morning, Daniel came back from a supply run with newspapers. He did this sometimes, bringing back news from the outside world. Rebecca usually ignored them, not wanting to know. But this time Daniel handed her one directly. "You should see this," he said, his expression serious. Rebecca took the paper. On the front page of the local section was an article. "Where is Rebecca Hayes? Missing teacher's disappearance remains mystery." Her hands shook as she read. The article detailed her disappearance, her abandoned car, the search efforts. It quoted her mother, pleading for information. It mentioned the viral video, but not in a mocking way. The journalist, someone named Kate Morrison, had apparently been investigating Tyler and had found other women with similar stories. Women he'd hurt. Women who'd been too afraid to come forward. "There's more," Daniel said, handing her another paper. "This one's from yesterday. This article was different. It was about Tyler specifically, about how 3 other women had filed police reports against him for assault and harassment, about how the original video of Rebecca had been re-examined as evidence of a pattern of abuse, about how public opinion had shifted and people were calling for his arrest." Rebecca read the whole thing twice, her emotions swirling. Relief that people finally believed her. Anger that it had taken this long. Sadness for the other women who'd suffered. And fear about what it meant for her hiding to continue. "This journalist," she said. "Kate Morrison. She's trying to help. Seems like it." Rebecca set down the papers and looked at Daniel. "I can't hide anymore, can I? People are looking for me. My mom is worried. And if there's a chance to get justice, to stop Tyler from hurting anyone else, I need to be part of that." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know, but I'm terrified." Rebecca's voice cracked. "I'm terrified to go back, to face everyone, to be vulnerable again." "You're not the same person who ran away," Daniel said. "You're stronger now. You know what you're capable of, and you won't be alone. I'll come with you if you want." Rebecca looked at him in surprise. "You'd leave the cabin? After 5 years? For you?" "Yeah, I would. Maybe it's time for me to face the world again, too." They spent the next few days preparing. Rebecca called her mother from Daniel's satellite phone, and her mom sobbed with relief to hear her voice. She didn't explain everything over the phone, just said she was safe and would be home soon. She called Kate Morrison next, the journalist who'd been investigating Tyler. Kate was shocked to hear from her, but professional and kind. She explained that Tyler was about to be arrested, that there was a strong case now with multiple victims coming forward. "Would you be willing to give a statement?" Kate asked. "An interview? It would help the other women. Show them they're not alone." Rebecca thought about the women in the hardware store who'd judged her, about everyone online who'd laughed at her humiliation, about Tyler and Vanessa living their lives without consequences. "Yes," she said, "I'll tell my story. But on my terms this time." The night before they were set to leave, Rebecca and Daniel sat on the porch one last time. The cabin had become home in a way Rebecca had never expected. It was where she'd healed, where she'd learned to be strong, where she'd fallen in love. "What if going back changes things between us?" she asked. "What if the real world is too much?" Daniel took her hand. "Then we deal with it, together. But I don't think it will. We're not running away this time. We're choosing to go back. There's a difference." Rebecca squeezed his hand. "I'm scared I'll lose this. This piece, this version of myself. You won't lose it. You carry it with you. Everything you learned, everything you built here, it's part of you now. Nobody can take that away." They made a plan. They'd drive down together. Daniel would come with her to meet with Kate Morrison. Rebecca would give her statement to the police. She'd talk to the journalist. She'd face Tyler in court if necessary. And then they'd figure out what came next. Maybe Rebecca would go back to teaching. Maybe she'd do something completely different. Maybe she and Daniel would split their time between the cabin and civilization, finding a balance. They didn't have to decide everything now. They just had to take the first step. The morning they left, Rebecca stood in the cabin one last time. She'd packed the essentials but left most of Daniel's clothes, most of the supplies, because they were coming back. This wasn't goodbye to the cabin. It was just see you later. She picked up the knife Daniel had given her, running her thumb along the handle. She strapped it to her belt, a reminder of everything she'd survived, everything she'd learned.